but I think it would be great for us to just move to the front. All right, so good morning and welcome to day 2 of the UCMP 8th Annual Oil and Gas Convention. My name is Tony Otoa, one of your MCs for this event. And again, I want to thank you all for coming early for day 2, which is going to be our final day, a day that is going to be super loaded and very interesting for you, the local businesses. Just a recap of yesterday, we had an opening session, and then of course a session on post-FID, an update on Tilenga, Kingfisher, ECOP, and of course the Kabale Industrial Park and Refinery. We then had experiences and lessons from the different entities that are participating in the sector, including Kamot Beta, Insurance Consortium, and of course PwC. And we had another session on experiences, lessons, and maximizing local content through supply chain management. And here we were focusing on agriculture. We also had another session on value retention and value retention blueprint from early lessons. And this saw a lot of interesting conversations coming in from Total Energies and Stanbic Bank, Slumj, and Minet. As some of the companies that participated. So today, for many of you who've been wondering what Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 means, today is the day that these conversations are going to happen. But like any of the oil and gas events or any of the events that we host, we're going to start off with a safety moment. And this safety moment is going to be done by Dr. Swaropa Deshpande. I hope I pronounced that right. And Dr. Swaropa Deshpande has been working in the industry for over 20 years. She's done a PhD in oil and gas management from the University of Petroleum and Energy Studies in Dehradun in India. And prior to her doctorate, she completed her Bachelor of Technology and Masters in Business Management in Pune University in India. She'll be supporting us with a safety moment, and the safety moment will be specifically around the importance of certifications in operations. Doctor.
Hello, good morning to all the delegates and the participants. Thank you for those kind words for me, and thank you all of you for joining this second day, much early after yesterday's cocktail and very exhausting day. And I must say I must congratulate in fact the organizer. Nowadays having such kind of physical meetings and cocktail is really precious. So good to be here. Now, we know that safety is really very precious or at the topmost when we talk of oil and gas. So let me start the session with a safety moment. So, yeah. Okay. Okay, so in today's safety moment, I would like to draw your attention to the commonly experienced but often neglected subject, which is stress and anxiety at workplace. So stress has become so much part of our daily routine that probably we do not see this as a concern or issue or a problem. But then this is very important to know that is stress or anxiety causing harm. So let me just try to take you to the basic thing. I think, yeah, it's again difficult for me to read from there. Let me open my mobile. Yeah, so what causes stress? So stress at work often caused by either a fear of being laid off, more overtime due to staff cutbacks, pressure to meet rising expectations, and many times no job satisfaction. And what are the anxieties? So the main culprit of work-related anxieties are stiff deadline, strain interpersonal relations, staff management, and rising issues and problems. How do I know that I'm going through such kind of stress and anxiety? So just take always quick 2 minutes look into the trouble which you are having. Ask yourself, are you feeling irritable, depressed? Are you having kind of apathy or loss of interest? Or maybe there are something which is affecting your health like headache, muscle tensions, many times excessive fatigue, problem in sleeping, social withdrawal, stomach problems, and all these kinds of issues are leading to mention that you are going through stress and anxiety. Do you think that this stress and anxiety, it is okay to live with it? Or what it can affect slowly? So you know it is important to maintain your physical and mental well-being, especially at work. Otherwise, this can lead to many serious direct or indirect implications like under stress, you may tend to happen serious accident. Sometimes there will be a lot of physical trouble happening or emotional outbreak. And still if not paid attention, so it can lead to phobias, hypochondriac anxieties, or excessive fear of inadequacy. So in short, do not live under stress or anxiety. What few things you can do to lower your stress level at work and in fact even outside your work. So at work, generally try to educate yourself. So these 2 minutes things, are you going through the stress? Practice time management, this has always helped. Plan and prepare in advance. Be realistic. Ask for help. Don't try to be superhuman. So all of us, we have our limitation. Try to understand and try to have a realistic deadline and target. Ask for help to your colleagues, to your family people. Keep communicating any kind of trouble or any kind of issues you are facing. Set boundaries. And most important, take frequent breaks. Apart from all these small tips at work, also try to have some outside work, stress relieving technique. Set aside relaxation time like meditation, exercise, jogging, all those stuff. Eating healthy, taking plenty of sleep, very basic but very difficult to follow. Have family vacations, people being social persons, so we always, have stress relieving things during the vacation, family vacations. Try to have exposure to nature, so it could be at the beaches, to the mountain, to the farms, to the greenery. And each time you get stress, okay, I think I just forgot to change, yeah, sorry. Yeah, so with all these tips, and lastly, whenever you are under stress, just try to follow simple motto, Hakuna Matata. So no worries, and just relieve with your stress. So with this safety moment or these safety tips, so let me just give quick glance at what are the importance of certification and where these apply. So whenever we are talking of oil and gas, so there are some more other important parameters or elements I can say, which are QHSSE, quality, health, safety, security, and environment. These are very important when we are talking of very complicated projects or risky projects of oil and gas. What are these QHSSE? Just the basic terms. So quality often provide services of the highest caliber by meeting customer expectation and delivering value. Health provide a sustainable workplace and work practices delivering world-class performance and care. Safety provide a threat-free work environment for employees. Security obviously is managing potential threats to operation, reputation, and assets. And environment which prevent pollution and reduce waste. So when we are talking of oil and gas project, as mentioned, oil and gas projects are always ranked among the most hazardous of business sectors, and it has potential for major accident-prone events. So oil and gas projects being incredibly complicated and inherently dangerous. So if stringent measures are not applied right from the beginning, the likelihood of rise to health and the environment risk grows exponentially. Hence, these parameters which we are talking QHSSE elements are very significant, with safety at the topmost and rest all element revolving and relying on it. So how do we measure this QHSSE? Yesterday, fortunately, we had one of our panelists, and the panelist has explained elaborately how these standards and specifications are important. And it is very good that within Uganda regulatory authorities and bodies, they already started implementing local regulations. So no need to reinvent wheels, and whatever international best practices, international standards and specification, just trying to adapt to the local industry here. And we have this set of all these benchmarks already with us. So this will have many best practices, standards and specification which will comply for QHSSE. So this certification is nothing but ensuring that you and your projects are complying for this. So there can be variety of certification. So either it could be system-related certification, it can be certification of the personnel who will be deployed in the projects and for critical functions, or it could be for the entire project certification. So depending on that, here is some of the list. So this is the last slide, so I have a short span, so I will just glance through. So there are various types of certifications, and fortunately Bureau Veritas in Uganda is capable of providing all these kinds of certification. So this can be ISO 9001 certification for quality management programs to improve efficiency and increase customer satisfaction. It can be ISO 45000, which are for the occupational health and safety at the heart of your business, which can prevent work-related illnesses and injuries to manage employee risk and achieve compliance. It can have ISO 14001 certification, which demonstrates your environmental consideration and commitment to customers, employees, and other stakeholders. In fact, there are food safety certification, and which can help you in controlling food safety hazards, and just to ensure that the food you are consuming is safe. For oil and gas related, there is one specific certification, which is ISO 29001, and that provides continual improvement, emphasizing defect prevention and the reduction of variation and waste in the supply chain for petroleum, petrochemical, and natural gas industries. Apart from that, there are some other certifications, like, as the operations are moving on, so you need to ensure that the energy used is efficient and there is no wastage. So energy management certification ISO 50001. There are other aspects like social accountability, SA 8000. So these help to develop, maintain, and apply socially acceptable practices in the workplace. So this can be ethical practices. There can be gender inclusion. Then there are corruption-free environment. So all these are equally important when such kind of large or mega projects are ongoing. So this SA 8000 will help you and will ensure you are following all these practices. When I was mentioning, there are certification for the personnel. So whenever some critical functions are happening, like, Yeah, just 1 minute. So when lifting equipment certification or welder inspection is happening, so those need to be done by the authorized and certified people. And the last is project certification, which provides assurance that the entire project, right from the design till the construction, installation, commissioning, is followed as per the specification and standards. And that's how, at the end of the day, you will get certification of compliance. And all these things Bureau Veritas can provide you. In fact, if somebody is not prepared for this certification, there are a lot of trainings which Bureau Veritas offers to prepare you for such kind of certification. So I think with this, I end my presentation. And just lastly to mention that all these oil and gas project execution, let's try to plan it based on the 3 pillars: shaping a better workplace, shaping a better environment, shaping better business practices. In short, shaping a better world. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor. I think we all need to take heed of the first slides, which were very important about stress. And I hope that today we are going to leave here less stressed about how to manage our businesses, how to run them efficiently, but also we hope that the presenters who are going to come here are going to give we the MCs less stress when it comes to time management. So I want to thank you again for coming to the second day of the Oil and Gas Convention. Now, yesterday we were told by a gentleman who shares the same name as myself, Mr. Anthony Kituka, that he was simply being a John Baptist. And when he said he was simply being a John Baptist, I thought about how many sermons we had listened to in the day, with another one coming from JB at Enoch. And I think it's now to simply say, he said that Jesus was coming. And I think that moment has come. So our next speaker today, is none other than Dr. James Mwangi. Dr. James Mwangi is the Group Managing Director and CEO of Equity Group Holdings and Executive Chairman of Equity Group Foundation. He holds 6 doctorates, 4 presidential awards for his contribution to human, social, and economic development. He serves on the Economic Advisory Board to the President of IFC, which is the International Finance Corporation, the advisory network to the High-Level Panel for Sustainable Ocean Economy, the Nairobi Advisory Board of Columbia Global Centers, Yale University, and the President's Council on International Activities. Dr. James Mwangi, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. From the onset, let me associate myself with the great work that has been done by the organizers of this convention. It's really great to have been put together. And specifically, I want to register my appreciation for the invitation. With us, a colleague, the CEO of UNOC, and the other partners. Once again, on behalf of all of us you have invited, we are very, very grateful. I know I've just been given 30 minutes, so allow me to cut short and straight to the issue that I've been given an opportunity to talk about, the regional outlook. And the regional outlook, the region we are talking about is the East African community. That's how I've interpreted. But I will extend a little bit because of the DRC and say it's East and Central Africa, and to a great extent appreciate that Tanzania and DRC are in SADC. So there's an element of East and Central and Southern African as part of the conversation when we talk about our region. The influence, the impact of that overlap of the two communities will continue to be felt. But let's contextualize this regional outlook. We are really doing a scan of this outlook at a time we are just beginning to recover, I hope, from a major multi-crisis, the COVID crisis, which started as a health pandemic, quickly became a social challenge, and eventually ended up becoming an economic crisis. And we saw almost what happened to the global economy, a 1 in 100 years shock. That's the context that's under which we really are scanning the outlook. But we also come closer the current situation of Russia and Ukraine and its impact on the global economy. So those two, I would say, they are the externalities, the shocks that we have to accept and acknowledge that they will have the biggest impact on whatever outlook. But if we single one or two things that will be really significant forces, the first one is disruption of global supply chains. The COVID phenomenon, if there is one thing it did, was to disrupt the order as we knew it. And so we have to ask ourselves, what will be the impact of global supply chains to the East? Is the elevated awareness and consciousness of humanity and the world that we had to build a sustainable world. Everybody understands that the worst of the world was exposed by COVID, and that is why it became quickly a multi-crisis, simply because from many aspects, there was too much exclusion, there was too much inequality, there was structural weaknesses, and that's why the world could not respond as effectively as people could have expected. And that's why the shock had such a significant impact. It exploited the structural weaknesses that existed. And the question is, now that the world is aware and conscious and realized what a pandemic can do, at a time the world is debating climate change, how will the world react to that awareness, that elevated consciousness? And that response, again, will shape the outlook of our region significantly. And the third force is geopolitics. Looks like we are enjoying, or we are going through, a very heightened geopolitical debates, whether it's between the West and the East, and specifically between US and China, that sort of the competitiveness, if we want to be very diplomatic and polite, we can call it the competitiveness between economies that are increasingly becoming aware that the influence of the world may not for long respect the 1945 agreements. China increasingly is sizing the US economy. What does that, and the reaction of the US to that threat, of a potential China becoming bigger than the US in not the too far distant future. What does that mean to the global economic order? What realignment most likely will happen? Are we almost going back, for lack of a better comparison, to the Cold War era? And that introduces the fourth factor, the Russia-Ukraine disruption, and almost the unanimous global response to Russia. To what extent will Russia be crippled? And what will be that crippling mean to the world? At the moment, we have seen it. I think oil prices, CEO, are up 35%. Wheat, a major commodity for those countries, up 40%. We have seen the sanctions limited because of Europe's dependence on Russian gas. And you start seeing the challenge. So those are the four major forces that we have to contextualize and ask ourselves what will be the impact. But let's come home to the region. We're coming to the region at a time, the region's outlook from an economic, social, and political perspective has never been this bright. The move we have seen in the last 5 years in DRC gives hope that there may be a way out of the situation DRC has been for 60 years, 60-odd years. Is this the movement that will see stability eventually to DRC, political stability? Will this be the movement of peace and lasting peace in DRC? What will be the implication of DRC joining the East African community and almost doubling the population of East African community? What does that mean? The second one is the significant investment we have seen in infrastructure in the East African community, and specifically Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. Those countries have more than ever in their history focused on infrastructure. Whether it is the standard gauge railway lines in Kenya, whether it's the electrical rails in Tanzania, whether it's the massive road infrastructure, ports, airports in Kenya, whether it's the significant road infrastructure, energy infrastructure in the region, and that massive investment, will it be made use of? And what will be the implication to the cost of doing business and ease of doing business in the region arising out of that? How attractive will the region become because of this massive investment? That is a huge issue one would really need to look into. The second aspect of it is the issue of the private sector. For once, we are seeing regional or private sector as opposed to national companies. We're now seeing regional companies in 8 countries within the region, bringing it, integrating that significantly. What will be the implication? The second aspect is the private sector is significantly becoming bigger and bigger by the day And essentially, we are seeing a tilt of balance, particularly in Kenya, between the public sector and the private sector, almost at the verge of the private sector becoming bigger than the public sector for once, and government ceasing to be the main consumer. The rising level of education and wellness. 20 years ago, life expectancy in Kenya was 43. We are now at 66. The demographics, just bear in mind the demographics. And demographics in perspective of health, education, and human capacity. Call it a Human Development Index. The people we had in the region 20 years ago are very different from the population we have. What will be the implication of a fairly educated population? A deep dive on the demographics also brings out the issue of age. A mean age of 18 years in the entire region. What does that mean? What it means, 18 years, is a population born and brought up in Kenya when Kenya had declared free primary education. So access to education is almost 100% for that generation. And that is a generation that is also technology savvy. It's a generation that has no hold-ups of what one would call legacies. They are born and brought up in a digital era. So it's a very uniform sort of demographic component. What does that mean to the East African region? And then the tailwind. We are very lucky within the community. We have the East African community, cross-border trade, cross-border movement of people, goods, and services. Yes, there are still barriers that we need to overcome, but there is a tailwind now of the African Continental Free Trade Area. What does that mean to a region that is experienced from an East African community or a SADC trading bloc? Is it able to leapfrog on its experience as a region to dominate the African Continental Free Trade Area? No other region in Africa is advanced in level of integration as the East African community. What does that opportunity mean to the region? So that becomes a major issue that one would then say, this will be a huge consideration. The level of integration also has now moved from protocols to infrastructure. There is quite a lot of integration at the infrastructure level, at the structural level, because that's what infrastructure. Beyond the soft infrastructure of regulation, of policies, we are now talking of physical infrastructure, whether it's airlines, whether it's roads, whether it's railways that interconnect the region. What would that mean? And so let me take then a shot at what the outlook from my perspective would be, but acknowledge that a lot has been said about the outlook for the region. And I want to start with the prediction of the IMF. IMF predicts that the region in 2022 will enjoy a 5.6% GDP growth rate as a region. Some countries are up 6.1, 6.8, and I think the West 5.2. That makes this region maybe, and I wish to be contradicted if it's not true, to be the fastest growing region in the world. Fastest growing region to the world. And the question then I would like to ask the audience, Jimmy, my friend, whether that will act as a signaling effect to the world about capital allocation, global capital flows. Will they see that as a signal? Why would they see it as a signal? Because that will be a 300 million market growing at 5.6%. And if you look at the projection up to 2025, they anticipate the average will go all the way to 6.4. Such an accelerated growth rate of a 300 million market, what does it mean to consumption? And what does it mean then as a market? Was that market sufficiently attractive? And particularly a market of a population whose mean age is 18. So you look at it both from consumption and how long that consumption can take, and then enhanced perpetual growth. That to me gives me hope that the prospects and outlook for the region is bright. But then we can ask ourselves, can that brightness be sustained? A brightness of a long-term market, because that population can consume for the next 80 years before it becomes 100 years old, because during their time they will live up to 100 years because of modern science and science and medicine. So you get a customer hooked and continue to consume. The prediction is that then with 5.6, the economy's Brent will be doubling every 6 years. At that rate, the population, the economies will be doubling in size. What does that mean? To consumption? Will consumption be doubling also every 6 to 10 years? And what does that mean then to capital that will have been invested? Which other region could offer such attractive opportunities in the world? To me, the conclusion is that the region will become a major attraction to global capital, because returns and growth of that magnitude will not be easily found anywhere else in the world. The third one is what we talked about, the disruption, both of Russia and COVID, of global supply chains, the enhanced and awareness and consciousness of the world that we need to build back better, not rebuild, build afresh, back better. And then the question is, why go to legacy systems when you can have a plain white canvas, which Africa offers, because it has no legacy. If it's manufacturing, whether it's investment, it's green fields. They are all green fields. So you could see the competitiveness of the region because you are not tied by anything. The only caution and constraint, will the governments be proactive in building the policies, the incentive schemes that will allow Africa to be that white canvas that would save the world from rebuilding to building afresh with no legacy systems and with the right environment where, for instance, pollution will be dealt with in advance from a policy perspective. The fourth consideration would be the readiness of the East African region in terms of infrastructure. We talked about people like exploiting infrastructure that has lower capacity of utilization, because then they can see congestion on the infrastructure will take a long time. For Kenya to fully utilize the standard gauge railway line capability, or Tanzania, the electrical railways, it will take maybe 30, 40 years to fully utilize and sweat that investment to optimal capacity. So people seize the headroom. They can see the headroom. There will be no constraints for a long time. Will that also be a major consideration? The only question is, are we packaging and advertising our countries and the region well? Are we packaging it well so that everybody can see? Another major significant contributor will be the region becoming a resource, a heavy resource region. We are in Uganda and we are talking about oil and gas. What will be the implication of such a resource to the region? And particularly if we pull through a refinery in Uganda, what will be the real implication? What about when you consider South Sudan has oil, Kenya has oil, DRC has oil, Tanzania has gas, Rwanda has gas in Lake Kivu. What about if you then consider gas in Mozambique? What will be the implication of such huge, huge region? Are we becoming the new Middle East in terms of oil and gas? And if we look back to what oil and gas has done to Middle East, can we pull a similar experience? And particularly on Hittite, everybody is clever. Can we learn from their experience and shape our trajectory better? Can we learn lessons from Norway, how they have used oil for posterity? Those are central questions one needs to really answer. Can we diversify our economies on the back of resources? And what will be the implication? I think that argument becomes even more compelling when you look at the role and place of DRC. There are three major resources the world requires, which are significantly almost a preserve of DRC. And the question is, at a time when the world is very conscious about environment, climate change, and is moving towards restoring and stopping deterioration of the environment, and DRC resources, particularly cobalt, lithium, and copper, seems to be the anchor products at the moment that could help the world save itself. And we have seen the prices of those commodities are at a record high, an all-time high. What will happen to the prices of commodities that have tripled in under 2 years? And what will happen to that revenue? How will we use it? If it is sustained for 30 years, because the resources, the reserves can sustain the world maybe for 20, 30, 50 years, what would be such a phenomenon together with oil in the region mean? So to me, then, when I consider all those factors, huge factors, I see in the medium term the integration of DRC to nearly 300 million people, a 240 billion economic bloc in terms of size of the economy. We are very, very well positioned to take a very progressive trajectory that will be the envy of most capital around the world. And there is a possibility that capital will quickly relocate to the East African region. And if it relocates to the region, what will we see? Will we see petrochemical industries falling oil? Will we see things like fertilizers becoming a major produce of the region? Are we seeing an opportunity maybe to replace most of the broken, disrupted global supply chains? Are we, the region, to fill that void that has been left behind? The question is, what decisions shall we make? Shall we see the world accepting that instead of exporting sheets of copper, let's make the electrical wires, copper wires from DRC? Instead of selling cobalt, is this the moment to set battery manufacturing factories in DRC? And I hope also the question we will ask ourselves, can we process our raw materials because we have a 300 million population market that is significant with incomes going up? And instead of sending our tea and coffee to come back as in sachets, we send our tea and coffee in 50 kilogram bags, and it comes into 10-gram sachets. Can we do that? And I always get perplexed. I was born to see my grandmother making porridge for the family by processing millet, processing maize or corn as a product, a final product from her farm. But today we seem to have lost that full capability to manufacture anything or to add any value. With a grinding stone, my grandmother could process flour out of millet, maize, and the family was almost self-sufficient. Is this an opportunity for our region to run and process whatever we produce, consume what we produce, as opposed to selling raw material? That is a central question to me. Then when I put all these perspectives, the opportunities created by disruptions, the alignment globally, the void that is being left by Russia, Ukraine, the challenge of the alignment because of the tension between the East and the West, I see Africa, and particularly East Africa, because of its attractiveness of rapid growth, infrastructure, a big population block, a big economy, as an opportunity for us to rise. And then the question is, what are we doing about it? And so I want to leave you with a challenge. What are we going to do? If this is the opportunity, as a generation, is it then our responsibility to close the opportunity, crystallize the industrialization of the African continent, and particularly our region? Will we miss this opportunity as a generation? Our people have been brought together as one people, one Africa, by the African Continental Free Trade Area. The global capital is willing to flow. The infrastructure is in place. What is really required is leadership. Can we study, understand, and learn this phenomenon, and then provide the leadership that is required? My focus is then it will happen if we as a generation do what needs to be done. As Equity Group, we have chosen to do what we need to do. We recognize we are the largest company in that block in terms of assets. We report in Kenya shillings, so let me give you the figures in Kenya shillings. 1.3 trillion Kenya shillings. That's equivalent to about 12.5 or thereabout billion US dollars. And we have started realizing we must exercise leadership. We are not going to have excuses. We are not going to pretend it's not our responsibility. So what have we come up with? And I allow you to be skeptical. We have come with what we are calling the African Recovery and Resilience Plan. Because what does Africa require? To recover and to be resilient, and then grow from a resilient platform. We have set aside 6 billion US dollars, or 800 billion Kenya shillings, and said, we'll seed this, but we'll give this money to the private sector to execute in the region. Fortunately enough, we have presented that plan to a number of people. We felt we could not do this on our own. So the first people to present to were the governments of the region. They have all signed up. Then we presented to the UN and said, UN, you have resident representatives in every country. You have 30 agents in each country within the bloc. Do you want to be part of this? They have signed up. We have gone to the Commonwealth and said, you are having a meeting in Rwanda in June. Can you make the plan, the African Recovery and Resilience Plan, part of your agenda? They have signed up. It will now be part of the agenda. We've gone to development banks and said, $6 billion is just a drop in the ocean in the transformation of Africa. Do you want to go this journey with us? The Bretton Woods institutions, IFC, World Bank, IMF have said, we'll work with you. Africa Development Bank has said, we'll be ahead of you. We'll not work with you, we'll work with our capability above you. 16 development banks have signed on the dotted line that they will co-fund this development plan. Equity has done its part. We challenge you to do your part. It requires everybody's effort, but we will have done our part. We have been bold. We are not scared or shy of being loved on because of our boldness and courage. But we are saying the opportunity has come to our generation. As I close, let me say money was not enough. We felt that it was leadership that was most essential. We scanned and saw our sons and daughters were all over in the world driving the global economy. And we said, why can't you drive the East African community economy and be the agents of change? I want to invite briefly the group team that I came with from Kenya just to show you. The preparedness is not about money. It's the people aspect. It's the leadership that is required. Guys, why don't you come forward? Brent, why are you not coming forward quickly? Yeah, why are you looking at each other? If you know, you came with me from Nairobi. Now, this is just about a sample of the people I came with from Nairobi and said, we'll disrupt Africa, we'll be the champions of change. Let me start with Brent Malhai. Brent Malhai is not from the bloc, he's from Philippines. I found him in JP Morgan, one of the brightest people I've ever met, and challenged me intellectually. And I said, why don't you come and be our group director of strategy for the African Marshall Plan? We are not doing it for the first time. I'm grateful Brent has been the chief architect of that plan. The other one is also not, as you can see, from our block. Joy Benedicto is American. She was the vice president of CNN for 15 years. Before that, she was the managing director of Jimmy Carter Foundation and served in President Clinton's administration. I asked Joy, can you come? You created a brand of Africa when you were in CNN. Why don't you come, we reverse the brand that Africa enjoys? We must communicate. But we are not communicating to ourselves. We are communicating to the world. We have no time to learn. People have learned. So Joy is our group director of communication, and she's the one taking the message of Africa, helping us to invite. Then Sam. We lost Sam to London many years ago, where he was a director of Barclays Bank. Then he was taken to Dubai to manage the entire Africa and Middle East. Some of you have worked with him. Before that, he had worked with Standard Chartered. We asked him, why don't you come back home and help us manage the entire risk of this program? And Sam has agreed to be our chief risk officer for this project. The other one is Kennedy. We lost Kennedy to South Africa many years ago, and he was the African director of ABSA, trade finance for the entire African continent. We told him what really needs to be fast-tracked is trade between ourselves. And fortunately, he accepted to come. We needed to understand oil and gas. Shah was, those who know, was Talos, ESG director in London, the global chief of ESG. We said, we are going to Uganda where there is oil, Tanzania has gas. Why don't you come and teach us? And we ensure we do it right. She was very kind to come back home. There is we have lost our friend Emmanuel. Emmanuel is Ghanaian. We borrowed him from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is the largest producer of oil in the world. And we said, you are the global director of credit for the largest Islamic bank on earth. Why don't you come back home and help us give out credit? And then eventually, we asked a medical doctor, Dr. John, to forget about small things of curation and said, let's prevent. And amazingly, 2 years, you have been with us 2 years? 2 years this June. She came, we told her the biggest problem of our own book is when a family member of a household that has borrowed falls sick. They always default. How can we deal with this? She said, but you can take a health insurance policy for all your borrowers. We did. But the supply side collapsed. We said, you advised us well about the demand, but we need supply. So we challenged her to set equity bank healthy clinics. This is a bank with healthy centers. In 2 years, she has 56 healthy centers. And last year, the clinics saw 701,000 patients. This year, she has a target of putting up 250 healthy centers. Between them, the target is they should see 2.4 million patients during the year. Now, that is the thinking. I think there is also Christine Brown. We got Christine Brown from the World Bank. She was a structural legal mind, and we said there are deals here to be structured in Uganda. in Kenya, in DRC, come and help us structure the deals. Jimmy, this is the team we are giving UNOC and say, let the Ugandan oil happen. We have brought them back home. We also have John, who was lost to Barclays Capital in London for 12 years. We asked him to come back and help also help structure investment opportunities. With those many remarks, I want to say the future or the outlook for our East African community looks very, very bright. But the question is, how do we convert outlook into reality? It will take leadership, it will take humility to understand none of us on our own can do it. And all of us must feel secure and confident to surround ourselves with the people who have been in countries, in regions where it has been done. We have no time to run and make mistakes. The wheel has been invented. Let's pick it and roll it and enhance the quality of our life. With those many words, I thank you for the opportunity to make those comments. Thank you very much.
Mwangi. I think the key takeaways from there is leadership, leadership, leadership. And we have all seen a great outlook for Africa, especially East Africa, our large populations, urbanization, and of course, the whole conversation around the implications for this oil and gas story. And again, avoiding the Dutch disease. So economic diversification or economy diversification becoming very, very key. And of course, efficient utilization of our resources, because as you know, we're a very resourceful continent, but how these resources are utilized is another story. So again, all of this lies and falls back on one critical thing, which is leadership. And thank you very much for that. We're now going into the next session, and this next session will be moderated by Peter Mulisa. Now, for many of you who have never met Peter Mulisa, he is currently the Chief Legal and Corporate Affairs and Company Secretary at the Uganda National Oil Company. Peter currently works with the Uganda National Oil Company and he at the Uganda National Company, which is mandated to manage the commercial interests of the state in Uganda's nascent petroleum sector. He was among the first 3 employees of the company. So that's a very interesting milestone, or a very interesting fact. One of the first 3 employees of the company, and during that time, he has participated in structuring the company, putting in place all systems and processes. He has also been involved in the negotiations of key agreements that have brought the oil and gas industry in Uganda to the point it is at today. He was part of the lead team that handled the heritage and tallow arbitration claims and related tax cases and enabled Uganda to collect close to $700 million US. Peter previously worked in the litigation office of the Uganda Revenue Authority, so clearly he knows how to collect money. And during this time, in this position, he appeared before all courts in Uganda and argued many of the key tax decisions. Peter is a qualified lawyer, a member of the Uganda Law Society as well as the East African Law Society. He holds a Bachelor of Laws degree from Makerere University, a postgraduate diploma in legal practice from Law Development Center, Kampala, and a master's in law in petroleum taxation finance from the University of Dundee in the UK. His interests, interestingly, are in oil and gas corporate governance and tax resolutions. Peter Mulisa, good morning.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Tony, for a very generous introduction. What a way to begin the morning, Dr. Mwangi. Clearly taking us to a different lane of thinking and challenging us to the core. Thank you so much. We've started a bit late, so I'll try to save us some time. We'll have breakout rooms today. So all the questions that won't be answered in this session can be taken in the breakout rooms. So good to see everyone here. You all look smart, ready to participate in the sector. Today morning we're going to speak about Tilenga project. The Tilenga project is one of the two upstream projects that are under development and from which we'll extract the crude oil. That is the reason we're here speaking about national content. Tilenga straddles two blocks in the north of the Lake Albert, and from it we'll be producing about 190,000 barrels of crude per day at peak production. There are many opportunities in this area or in this project, and I have a very wonderful panel to come and take us through these opportunities. Permit me to invite my panel of four eminent persons. Yesterday we heard of Mr. Pipeline. I think we almost had a Mr. Refinery. Today I'm sure we'll have Mr. Tilenga. So permit me to first invite Mr. Idrissa Kwizera, who works as the in-country project representative for Tilenga, to come to the stage. Allow me also to invite Mr. Miguel Leon from McDermott to join Idrissa up here. Barbara Karungi I believe, still with McDermott to join us up here. And Mr. Chi Luan, if you could join us as well from Sinopec. As my panel settles in, we are going to take no more than an hour. We'll try to make sure we keep time as we make our presentation. The first presentation will come from Idrissa, who is the project, in-country project representative, Tilenga, for Total Energies. Mr. Kwizera is an industrial operations leader with over 18 years experience in oil and gas manufacturing, mining, and has worked in Uganda, Kenya, and the UK. Prior to his current appointment, Idrissa was head of development at Talo, Uganda. So many people have been nurtured by Talo, and we appreciate the contribution. Where he managed key operatorship transition work on engineering, operations, and technical disciplines, as well as leading execution of Block 2 license, which is part of Tilenga, operator obligations, and providing input to the technical de-risking of the Lake Albert oil and gas project. You will see the composition here. Mr. Kwizera works for Total Energies. Total Energies is the operator of Tilenga on behalf of the equity participants in this project, who are Total holding 56.7%, Sinuk holding 28.3%, and UNOC holding 15%. And as I will introduce the team from McDermott and Sinopec, you will notice that Total is the employer or the licensee of McDermott and Sinopec. So Mr. Kwizera is going to come here and tell us about the opportunities available from the licensee point of view. And thereafter we'll have McDermott and Sinopec tell us about opportunities from the EPC or Tier 1 contractor point of view, and I've asked them to highlight those opportunities that are available so that we can prepare and plan to take those opportunities. Kindly allow me and welcome with me Mr. Kwizera to make his presentation. Thank you. Mr. Kwizera.
Thank you very much, Peter. Good morning, everyone. It's great to see wonderful people in the room. Thanks, Chairman Mwangi. Thanks, Chairman Eli, for making this happen. Coming on the stage after Mr. Mwangi is a challenge because I think we have been challenged to look at this opportunity in a different way, and the challenge is accepted. My task here is fairly simple. However, I would like to preamble by saying it's a continuation of yesterday. Yesterday, our general manager was here, and he, as part of his update, he did mention some of the key main contracts that have already been awarded. And where I emphasize that, I'd like you to remember the mention, and I'll try and highlight a few of them as a continuation, because therein lies a key opportunity going forward. So, Peter has already mentioned to you what Tilenga is all about. It's a key part of the Lake Albert Development Project. What are the opportunities? For ease of memory, these opportunities are in 2 tiers. There are opportunities that will be directly offered by Total Energies as the operator of Tilenga. Because one of the things we intend to do, I think, in such conventions and other supplier dialogues is to clarify. Because in fairness, the market is too populated with information. So I'll attempt to separate between what we call Tier 1 and Tier 2. So the first set of opportunities are those directly offered by the company, Total Energies. So I'll go through those, and then I'll also go through those that are offered as Tier 2 or below by our main contractors. Yesterday, our general manager mentioned that if we attempted to list all the contracts here, we would need several days. So what we have done for brevity is just to compress the major contracts. Bear in mind, there are hundreds of other contracts we don't mention here, but they've always been a public domain through our advertisements. So what I'm mentioning here are the major contracts and major opportunities. I also want to emphasize something the ED of PAU mentioned yesterday. Whereas we speak of contracts, the theme being value retention, don't forget the wide understanding of value. So there's contracts where there is services to be offered, goods and services, but value will come in many shapes: skills, technology transfer, employment, and training of Uganda. So remember that. But a good thing is that even for these opportunities I mentioned, all those elements of value are covered. So I'll go straight into it with the Tier 1. I don't know whether they'll project. I just have one slide, so it is very simple. I would like us to have a discussion. And as you have seen the panel, we will hear more from our Tier 1 major contractor, McDermott and Sinopec, now and also during the breakout sessions. So if they can project so that people can even take note, and I'll talk through them. The first opportunity coming up directly by the company is under the enabling infrastructure. So as part of site preparation, we have what we call enabling infrastructure. Simply put, these are the early works, the civil works that we do before we start the major construction. So we do have opportunities coming up. In yesterday's presentation, you saw that we had already awarded 4 out of the 8 packages for the roads. So there are 4 more packages that are currently in the market. These are civil works, and I'm glad to report that these shall be done by Ugandan companies, exclusively by Ugandan companies, civil works. So 4 packages. I don't want to bore you with the layout of our area, but these are roads that will be constructed to facilitate. Thank you. These are the roads that will be, so that's the first element of enabling infrastructure. These are the roads that will be upgraded or constructed to facilitate access to different facilities, whether it's the industrial area, whether it's the well pads, and so on. So, civil engineering companies are participating in those. And as I said, these will be done by Ugandan companies. The other packages were already awarded, and the companies that have been awarded to are in this room: Pali Engineering, Motor Angel, and others, okay? The other opportunity that is coming up is the area of logistics. As you can imagine, to undertake a $4.5 billion infrastructure project, there's a requirement to move a lot of kit from point A to point B. So we do have 2 upcoming logistics scopes. One of them is the intra-field, which basically means all movement of kit, mostly within our area of operation, including the lifting requirements. So this is also at a stage where we have, actually before this event, 2 days ago, we received, on Monday we did receive an objection from the Petroleum Authority. So we're just awaiting for our partner approval, and we shall award this contract to a Ugandan company. This is a massive logistics contract, and to be awarded to a Ugandan contractor. The other logistics opportunity is the regional logistics. Remember now from, as you can imagine, when we have kit coming in from abroad, we have decided to break it down as a strategy to unbundle, to make sure that there's more participation. So this is another service that we expect to have, which is a logistics service provider, regional logistics and freight forwarding. And we are also in very advanced stages. We have completed our selection process. And in the coming weeks, once we get an objection from government, we should be able to select a Ugandan company to deliver this service. And you will see why I'm emphasizing this, even though they are at award stage. You will see that in my next part of the presentation, why this is extremely important. Because these contracts are multi-million-dollar contracts. And each of these Ugandan service providers that will be selected will need help from this room. In undertaking our Tilenga project, we will need to fly into the field from time to time. So we need aviation services. Those who have been to our area of operation, we have an airstrip at Ibugungu. It's Uganda Wildlife Authority operated, but we use it for our project. We also have a backup at Pakuba, towards Pakwach. And we shall be taking off from Entebbe. We shall have at least 2 flights per day to help crew changes. We shall have, at the peak of the project, we shall have more than 600 staff and more than 3,000 workers, the majority of which will be from McDermott and Sinopec. Close to 2,800 staff. And for you to be able to move those people in and out when they are going for their break or they are coming to work or for missions, we need aviation. So we shall have an aviation services provider. At the moment, we are finalizing clarifications with this service. And in the coming weeks, again, we'll make it known to the public who this service provider will be. But again, this has been an opportunity in the market, and perhaps some of the people on this conference are taking part in this service. Moving on, we are also looking post-first oil, because first oil is imminent. But we have facilities that require maintenance, whether it's the airstrip, whether it's the well pads, whether it's the areas outside the industrial area. So we also have a service coming up, which we call the maintenance and civil works for well pads, airstrips, and other allied facilities. So we require a service provider to be able to undertake this. And as you can see, because it's post-first oil, it's actually a medium to long-term opportunity. And again, we are targeting Ugandan suppliers to do this for us. So please, we would like to see a huge appetite, because we have published a request for expression of interest. We request you to express interest and hopefully we'll see you on the other side in preparation to undertake these services. Waste management. You saw yesterday our general manager did show an aerial picture of the industrial area, massive area. And that's just the industrial area. We do have satellite locations at 31 well pads, access roads. When you're moving within such an area during construction, or even during operation, you generate a lot of waste. But we're a competent operator and we operate sustainably, so we need a competent waste management company. Another massive undertaking to deal with our 5 or 6 types of waste streams, from solid, liquid, hazardous, non-hazardous, inert, and so on. And we know that there are many Ugandan companies with this capability. And I'm glad to report that we do have an expression. Already we do have companies that have expressed interest in this, and this is a huge opportunity that is coming up as well. As you know, the regulation in Uganda requires that the person who is generating the waste cannot be the one managing it. In fact, they can't even transport it. So you can see, what does that mean? It means that there's an opportunity for somebody to transport the waste and also to treat it. And as I said again, this will be done by Ugandan companies. Huge opportunity, multi-million-dollar undertaking for the next 5 years for the waste management. We are constrained not to issue contracts beyond 5 years by the regulation, but these services are required beyond 5 years. But the law requires that we issue at not exceeding 5 years, and we should undertake another call for tender process to get another, to give a chance maybe to new players who might come on board. So that's why I keep saying for the next 5 years. The final element I will talk about in the Tier 1 contracts is in the area of field operations. Again, looking beyond first oil. We are already looking beyond. We are now in the execution phase of the project. We are putting the facilities up. But once we start producing oil, we will need services from various contractors. You can see on this text between 50 and 80 different services, whether it's provision of lubricants, special chemicals, maintenance services, inspection services, engineering services, process-related services, provision of personal protective equipment. We have 80 to 50 contracts that are coming up. And all of those, if they're in excess of $500,000, will be advertised in the widely read newspapers of Uganda. So we encourage you, when you see them, at least you remember that someone from the project mentioned them. And we encourage you to express interest. In a true spirit of a competent operator, we give you ample time before first oil. So this is why we will be running some of these tenders, even a couple of years before they are required. Okay? So that's on the area of Tier 1 contracts, contracts that Total Energies will put in the market directly. The second part, and I would like you to pay close attention. Yesterday, you had, I think, my general manager and also the EDPAU say, as of today, we have already committed in excess of $3 billion. We already have a contract with McDermott and Sinopec, close to $2 billion. We already have a contract, various contracts with the drilling and wells contractors. Schlumberger, Valorweg, ZPEB, EnviroServe, COSOL, between them, close to 900 million. So and enabling infrastructure. So close to $3 billion worth of contracts have already been committed. So the second part of my presentation in terms of opportunities is the Tier 2 and below. Those major contractors will need subcontractors. So this is where I would like you to listen carefully. And some people have been mixing them up. Maybe I'll give you an example. Someone asks you, I have seen a request for submission of a proposal from McDermott regarding logistics, but I already saw you have already done your own logistics. Is it a duplication? No, it's not. Whereas as a company, we might have our own logistics providers. The contractors in their own rights, McDermott and Sinopec and others who you have had in this convention, will require similar services because they will have different items to move. So it's possible that they might have the same type of service, say logistics. So please, if you're in doubt, I remember my contracts and procurement manager mentioned yesterday, engage, ask, seek for clarification. But please don't see something from our contractor and say, this one, I've already seen it. So, in 3 broad categories, EPSCC, I will say just a few words because you'll have sufficient time to hear from McDermott and Sinopec. But just to give you a headline of the flavor of the kind of tier 2, because what McDermott and Sinopec do, they prepare what they call a subcontract development schedule, which outlays, the kind of subcontracts they will be getting into. But what are the key headlines of the types of services you'll be looking at? Logistics, as I mentioned, because the contractor is responsible for their own logistics. So they'll go out to the market to look for a logistics provider. In fact, McDermott has split and said they need an onshore and an offshore service provider, as an example. Surveying services, quantity surveying, cadastral surveys, all the surveying. Recently, we met the Institute of Surveyors of Uganda. All the 6 disciplines of surveying will be in attendance under the EPSCC, and they will be seeking for the services of Ugandans. Cadastral surveys, quantity surveying, all of those. Okay? Fabrication. They are not going to bring people from many places to come and fabricate. So, in putting up the facilities, they will need services for fabrication. So that's an area that you will see being advertised. Medical services. I believe McDermott already has a joint venture involving Case Hospital to undertake the medical services. To treat 4,000 people, you need a competent medical services provider. But other contractors will be in the market to look for similar services, medical services. Because when somebody sees medical services, say, what business do I have in oil and gas? You do. 4,000 workers will need services. EPC building. This is civil works, so there will be an opportunity for Ugandan companies to undertake the building of the facilities within the industrial area. Various supplies and tools, they will be needed in the market as well. Security services. The contractors are responsible for their own security. So, security companies, and security is ring-fenced for Ugandan companies. So, for sure, you need to be able to participate. Manpower services, by the very nature of this contract, where it is a finite amount of time, not everyone who will be employed will be a permanent worker within the company or within the contractors. So manpower services companies will be engaged extensively. So that's an opportunity as well. I believe some of them are already doing this, but there will be many more to come. As I said, we expect, you saw in the slide yesterday by the GM, we expect to have up to 7,800 Ugandans at peak on Tilenga. Under drilling and wells, I think the main one I would like to highlight is the provision of building materials. The drilling and wells contractors will set up drilling support bases. And for this, they will require contractors. They already have services of architects who are doing the designs, so they will need contractors to put up these buildings. And they'll be buying materials from the market. One of the key commitments from every one of our contractors is the commitment around goods obtainable in Uganda. So cement, steel, sand, maram. These are opportunities for us to look out for. Under enabling infrastructure, so we have already awarded what we call the package 1 for the site preparation for the industrial area to Motor Angel. We have recently awarded the airstrip upgrade to Excel and Terrain. These contractors, as we have seen with Motor Angel, who has at least a dozen other subcontractors, will now need subcontractors, whether it's for subcontracting part of their works. We have seen from the first package that these enabling services contractors will subcontract earthworks, fencing, provision of catering services. And in case you're wondering, of what interest is it for me to go and do fencing for another contractor who is contracted by Total? Well, you should be interested because we're speaking of huge undertakings. If you to fence the industrial area, this is a multi-million-dollar fencing activity. So when you are invited to undertake subcontracts, please do express interest. I would like to end by just emphasizing something around the governance of these opportunities. So as I said, tier one, the company goes out in the market, advertises, performs the selection process as a company. The tier two and below are managed by our contractors directly in line with an agreed subcontracting schedule. So please respond to the contractors directly where it's a tier two or below. Where you are in doubt, please ask. Like my colleague mentioned yesterday, it's not unusual for us to get people writing to us about a service that has been advertised by Sinopec, for example. Second thing, we are working with the contractors to make sure that there is transparency. So everything in excess of $500,000 as an estimate must be, advertised in line with the regulation. And when you see those advertisements, please respond. And like they said yesterday, don't wait 1 hour before the closing period. Because we also have a planning constraint. So if you have been given 2 weeks, respond. If you have a constraint in responding in that period, write back before the end of the period requesting for an extension. It's different from writing back after the end of the period. Okay? And finally, you will hear more details from my colleagues from McDermott and Sinopec. But I want you to remember that McDermott and Sinopec is only part of the Tilenga project service providers. We do have other service providers on drilling and wells. We have other service providers on enabling infrastructure, the civil works. So we will be holding other events where these other service providers also can deep dive on the opportunities in their areas. But please do not shy away. I would like to end by making an observation. Yesterday, when my colleague was making a presentation about the tips, what we have seen as the shortfalls, I think half of the audience had moved. And for me, I would like to, as a Ugandan, to encourage all of us to increase our interest in this project. We only award to those that have expressed interest, and you're only evaluated as you have bid, not as you are known to be, but as you have submitted a bid. So please, if you have not gotten these tips that Pamela presented yesterday, go and look at them again. Where are we finding gaps, and how can we close those gaps? Seek for help. No one company here can be all self-sustaining. You need help. If you need help on EHS, get help. If you need help on national content, get help. I'll end by mentioning, since the theme here is national content and value retention, that by being a Ugandan company, it's not enough to expect a huge national content value proposition. National content is more than just being a Ugandan company. National content has 3 building blocks: employment and training of Ugandans, using of goods obtainable and services obtainable in Uganda, and capacity building and technology transfer. So if an international company shows a huge proposition in those elements, they might have a slight edge over you, a Ugandan, who shows up with a blank submission on national content, just because you're a Ugandan company. So remember that, and seek for help where possible so that you can perform well in that space. Thank you very much, and I'll be available to take any questions.
Excellent job, Mr. Kwizera, and I want to emphasize the last point that you made. I was looking at the bid evaluation report, and a Ugandan company had scored 0 on national content. And that's surprising, because it shouldn't be. But it's clear that in that section of the bid, the company didn't write a single thing. So, seek help if you do not know what to do in some spaces, as Mr. Kwizera advises, and let's score points in those areas that we are strong in, like national content, which should get maximum marks in any evaluation. Permit me, before I call Mr. Miguel, to recognize two people who were not here yesterday, but have graced us with their presence this morning. My boss, Ms. Proskovia Nabanja, the CEO of UNOC, please stand and wave to the audience. And permit me, Ambassador Richard Kabonero, to recognize you. Kindly wave to the audience. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next conversation, we'll have Mr. Miguel and Ms. Karunji take us through what's available at McDermott and, of course, Sinopec. They are the major contractors, EPSCC for Tilenga. The contract is huge, and I think what we've heard this morning is big contracts, many contracts, opportunities, literally for everyone interested. But Miguel and Ms. Karunji will break it down on what's available under McDermott. Mr. Miguel is the operational manager for McDermott International. He has 35 years experience with international EPC work in oil and gas. He started as a process engineer, continued as an engineering manager, project director, and now the operations manager in Uganda for Tilenga. Mr. Miguel has worked across the world in Europe, South Africa, Namibia, Mexico, Saudi, and in other places as the EPC main contractor. The type of projects he has been involved in are largely oil and gas related, and he has been in construction of 4 refineries, 2 petrochemical industries, and many such complex projects. Kindly welcome with me Mr. Miguel to come and take us through what's available through McDermott. Thank you. Excellent. So Miguel and Ms. Karunji will share the podium to speak about McDermott. So I think it makes sense that I introduce both at the same time. Ms. Barbara Karunji is the Tilenga National Content and Social Responsibility Manager at McDermott. She has approximately 10 years experience, working knowledge of leading national content and social responsibility initiatives. She has experience in capacity building of over 1,500 Ugandans trained under the E4D SOGA program, one of those that we are really proud of, aimed at building both technical and soft skills for the oil and gas industry in Uganda. She has previously worked on infrastructure development projects like greening Uganda's industrialization and urbanization, Kampala Industrial Business Park in Namave, and has done compliance, monitoring, and assistance for WAKI HPP that had heavy focus on social responsibility. So I believe we do not have anyone better than Ms. Karunji to tell us about national content and social responsibility. She holds an MSc degree in international business and finance and is a certified project manager. Ms. Karunji will speak after Mr. Miguel to break down for us what's available at McDermott. Mr. Miguel.
Well, thank you for the introduction. And we are going to, Barbara and myself, we are going to share the presentation. First, we will present McDermott portion, and then Mr. Chi will continue with Sinopec, and hopefully we'll have some time for question and answer at the end of the presentation. Then what I would like to remind is that 1 year ago, in June 2021, we celebrate the 7th convention, and oil and gas convention. It was virtual. During this convention, we present our plan And what we want to do today is to review how it's going and where we are now. Very quickly, this is McDermott. This is McDermott business. We deliver integrated and sustainable solutions, and for upstream, downstream, and refining, petrochemical, and also is for offshore, onshore. In this case, we are working in an onshore project upstream. This is very quickly just to give you a feeling about what is the business, McDermott business in the world. Oops. Okay, here is what we are presenting is the McDermott locations in the world. Now we have also Uganda. We established a company in 2021 for this project, and our aim is to be here not only for this project, our aim is to be here for many years. We don't want to finalize this project. It's difficult to establish the company in a new country, and what we want to do is to continue in the country for as much as we can. The project is being executed from our London office, the EPC phase, with the help of The Hague and also the Gurgaon office in India. And obviously, we are supporting here from Uganda. Construction is going to be here in Uganda, in the Bulisa area. Here we are showing more or less the numbers to give you a feeling what is the size of McDermott in the world and the locations. Next slide is to share one of our values, the HSE, safety. We have some our operational values, and this is one of the most important. And we need to transmit these values, and we are doing now on the site. Our people on site are working with the companies who are now executing works on site, and we are implementing these values. Here, there are some acronyms like lost time incident rate and total recordable incident rate. These are quite normal in this business, and these values that you see in the screen are quite low, and we need to maintain this. And Tilenga project now is part of all the project that McDermott is doing, and Tilenga has to be in the range. Nowadays, Tilenga is following these statistics, and what we want to do is to continue like this in the near future. It's not going to be easy. We need a lot of support from subcontractors and from our people, but I think that we can do it. Then Barbara is going to continue with the social responsibility.
Good morning, everyone. For social responsibility, McDermott is committed to ensuring that we implement all our activities in a very socially responsible way. And there are certain principles and objectives that we implement through which. One of them is by protecting our workers, and that is through the extensive HSE training that we participate in, as well as our subcontractors. Also building the capacity of the communities through employment and enterprise development, respecting the community culture in which we operate in. That's very critical to us, as well as improving the human rights and working conditions of all those on the sites. One of the key principles that also guides the way in which we operate is diversity, inclusion, as well as equity. These are key in promoting representation and participation of all, not only men in this construction industry, but as well as women. And we have been fortunate enough to work with subcontractors such as GCC, as well as KBJV, who have had targeted recruitments that have only sought to make sure we increase the numbers of the women that are on the site as well. Miguel?
Thank you, Barbara. Now what we are going to go through our scope of work very quickly because you have seen, or many of you have seen this slide before. Tilenga contract is divided in 4 different packages. Package 1 that is being developed by McDermott, and package 2 and 3 and 4 that is being developed by Sinopec, our consortium partner. This is the main objective of the Tilenga project. It's not the camp construction. The camp is just a facility to build this project. Then for the package 1, the main is the center of processing facility. On the bottom left, in blue, you can see the schematic. This is the industrial area, and where we have the central processing facility, we have also the temporary camp, and the facilities for the operators that are going to operate the facility for maybe 20 years. Then in pink, also on the left, you can see the package 2, 3, and 4, which is the lines interconnecting the well pads with the CPF, and also the leak water extraction. And finally, the package 3 and 4 are the well pads. The well pads, there are some well pads before first oil, and Sinopec will continue constructing the well pads till, I think it's 2029, more or less, 2028, 2029. There are another schematic showing the CPF in the center, 3D slide showing more or less how it looks like. Also the interconnecting pipelines and an example of a well pad on the right. Here we have on the left, you can see the whole industrial area. As it was mentioned yesterday by Total General Manager, the EA is more or less 2 kilometers times 1.5. It's quite big. And in yellow is the main area is the CPF area. The other blocks are for temporary facilities and for the operators, for the permanent facilities for operators. Total is handing over to us the different blocks. We already have several of them. Total keeps working on another blocks, and while we are working, now we are working in the CCA area that is at the bottom, is where we are going to have the camp. To give you an idea about the camp, the size of this CCA area is more or less 500 meters times 300, to give you an idea about the size of the camp. On the right is you have the facilities that in three years has to be built. This is the CPF, how it looks like the CPF. With the different process areas, I am not going to enter in technical details, but there are GTGs to produce energy. Also, we have separation where we are going to separate water from the oil and the gas, the flare area, and also we have the water treatment because we need to treat the water that is going to be injected on the wells. Here, this is another view it's a snapshot of the 3D model. How it looks like. We are investing hundreds of thousands of hours in the design, and this is a key tool to do the design. This representation, in 3 years, you will have this on site. It's going to be the model 1.1. And you see there are pipe racks, equipment, roads, and now it's a flat area you saw yesterday in the photos shared by the Total General Manager, but in 3 years you will see something similar to this. And this is the camp, a plot plan of the camp that is the first construction work that we started. It's a Carmot Beta, the JV is doing the work. This camp, as you hear many times, is for more or less 4,000 people. We have all the facilities. As Idrissa said, we are going to have medical facilities. We are going to have canteen, laundries, sport, well, I think it's basketball courts and all, some different facilities to relax people. And the accommodation is following is above the World Bank standards for everybody. And we expect to have the first 100 beds in this month in operation. And by the end of the year, we need to have the 4,000 beds ready for us and for the subcontractors that are going to work with us on site. This camp is going to be there till 2029, not the full camp, and after 2029, this camp will be dismantled. This is not, as I said before, this is not the main purpose of the project. This is just a facility that is helping in the project. Here we have some photos of the camp. You saw yesterday some of also similar photos. And what I want to emphasize, there is a photo on the bottom right. You can see a worker working in a scaffolding. And it's just to give you an idea what is our standard. Yesterday we talked about here standards. This is our standard. The scaffolding is metallic, something that here is sometimes in some construction is being used, but not always. Each level is having platforms. This is a standard requirement in oil and gas. And this guy who is there at the top is working at height. He has an harness, and you cannot see, but the harness is clamped to the structure. This is a must, and this is the way that we work. How do we work in Tilenga, but not only in Tilenga, it's in any oil and gas project across the world. This is what we are bringing here because what we want to take care is about for the people that is working with us.
So in terms of the national content maximization, there are 3 focal areas we look at, like Idrissa had highlighted earlier, which are employment, goods and services, and technology transfer. So I'll be giving an update on each of these sections, more specifically employment and goods and services. Technology transfer will be better highlighted in the preceding quarterly supplier engagements we'll be having. So So for employment, we are committed to developing and mobilizing local resources, and retention and progression is very important to us. However, we need to be aware that most of the employment will be project focused, so the numbers will fluctuate. They'll increase next year, but they'll fluctuate based on the phases of work. So the numbers that you have in front of you, let's focus on the cumulative to date. We have mobilized 410 people. Out of those, 367 are Ugandan, and 49 are from the local community. These numbers are only as per the Q1, so as of end of March. But there have been some recruitments since then. For example, for the local community, numbers are now as high as 80, but they'll be starting this month. Next slide. So this list are the subcontracts that have been awarded to date. If you have your cameras, please take a picture of this list, because these are the people you need to be talking to and seeking out right after this presentation. They are the subcontracts that we have awarded to date. There are 11. I apologize for the misnumbering, but there are 11 that have been subcontracted. Out of 2 of those, only 2 are JVs, as you'll see. The rest are Ugandan companies. So there are a lot of opportunities that they will be providing. And in the breakout session that we'll have right after this, they'll be presenting their scope as well as the opportunities and highlighting how Ugandans can demonstrate their interest and participate.
Okay, this is the subcontract strategy. This slide, it was presented more or less like it is now 1 year ago in June in the previous oil and gas conference. And what we are not going to go through all the points that are here, but what we want to emphasize is that we will give priority to Ugandan companies as we are doing till now. As Barbara mentioned, two of the contracts awarded till now are JVs, the other went to Ugandan companies. But everybody has to keep in mind that we are not going to compromise the execution or the safety or the quality of the project. This, for us, is we need to deliver a project, and yesterday the general manager from Total told us that these are must that we need to fulfill. And then for us, this is a priority for Ugandans or not Ugandan companies. Another point that I would like to mention is that we will give priority to Ugandan companies according to the petroleum regulation from 2016. We will follow this regulation in detail. There are some services that we are going to provide. These services were identified 1 year ago, and we are following this table. For the sake of time, we are going to continue. Well, these are the opportunities that we have for the next 6 months, starting now in April. There are 2 tables. In total, there are 16 upcoming subcontracts. There are indirect support. Also, there is engineering, third-party services, temporary facility support. You can take a picture, or you can take later a note from probably the chamber is going to share the presentation. But what I want to go specifically to the line 14, 15, 16. These are the most important subcontracts that the SMP, the structural, mechanical, and piping, E&I, which is electrical instrumentation, and piping prefabrication. These 3 are the core subcontracts that are going to be awarded in the coming weeks, or maybe in May. Also, we are going to award in the near future the onshore logistics. As Idrissa mentioned, we split the logistic in offshore-onshore. Then the onshore logistic is going to be awarded to Ugandan company or Ugandan companies. Could be several companies. Here, these are 2 advertisements that we place in the newspaper on 31st and 1st of April. It's difficult or impossible to read, but at least take note of the dates when we place the advertise, because you can go to the newspapers and go through our request for expression of interest. There are plenty and from different activities. Some of them will be awarded in the coming weeks or months. Some of them will be awarded in the future. And here, Barbara is going to go quickly through the subcontractor profiles that we already awarded, and you will be able to talk with them later during the breakup session.
So this is our subcontractors right now. We have Kamod Beta. They are responsible for the design, engineering, and constructing the camp. So they have a lot of opportunities, and they will be presenting within 30 minutes. So you'll be able to at least put a face to these companies and engage them. Next, we have GCC that's in the room right now as well. They're providing the catering, camp maintenance, and camp management of the main construction camp with an expected maximum capacity of 4,000 people who all need to be fed and taken care of. So if you can provide a service to GCC, please take note and engage them as well. This is a JV for medical services. It's UHC, GM, and Case Hospital. They'll be providing the site medical services for treatment of any injuries as well as illnesses for the entire workforce. They're in the room as well. Mantrak is another subcontractor. They'll be supplying the temporary power generation facilities for the camp. They'll be presenting this within 30 minutes as well. Motaengil, who I'm sure you're all familiar with, is doing the general civil works for the project as well as the direct works. I won't go into detail of what other services they'll be providing as they'll be presenting. BV will be doing all their scope is a detailed design appraisal as well as inspections. So anyone who's interested in working with them, just take note of the services they'll be providing, but they'll be giving their presentation in much more detail later. KK Security is providing all the man guarding services to the camp. And lastly, we have a new plan that will be providing services for all the local regulations as well as site permitting support and site survey services. So all these subcontractors are going to be presenting the scope as well as opportunities in the next breakaway session for McDermott, while Sinopec subcontractors will be presenting in another room. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, McDermott. Apologies, I feel we've rushed this. But we have an opportunity in the breakaway room to engage McDermott and Sinopec together with their subcontractors. We can ask questions. We have a networking event in the evening. That's another opportunity to engage and get more information. Permit me to invite Mr. Shi Ruan from Sinopec. Is our last speaker, and I ask that you allow we skip the Q&A, go for a break after he speaks, and then from the breakout room, we can ask all the questions that we should have asked here. I hope you allow that. Mr. Ruan is the Deputy General Manager of Sinopec Services Uganda. He's worked with Sinopec since 1996, so very experienced, and has worked in this part of the world in Africa since 2001. He worked in Nigeria, Central African Republic, South Sudan, Kenya, Algeria, and many African countries. He has also worked in Saudi Arabia, and he's very experienced in oil and gas. Together, permit me to invite Mr. Ruan to come and speak to us about opportunities under Sinopec. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for attending this convention. Now, because of the time, I will give a very brief introduction of this company and the project, and also to explain the opportunity for the national content. That means what we can do here. Sinopec is a company. It's established in the 1950s. It has a history more than 70 years. It's a super large petroleum and petrochemical enterprise group with upstream, midstream, and downstreams. The revenue is 404 billion in 2020. It's ranked 2 of the global 500 in 2021. The Sinopec has staff more than 700,000 staffs. For this Tilenga project, is Sinopec Service. Sinopec International Petroleum Service Corporation will implementing this project. Sinopec Services is the petroleum service providers, EPC contractors. with a good experience and reputations. This Sinopec service responsible for contracting, uniform management, cooperation, and organization of contracted international projects and technical services. So this is the history of the Sinopec Group and the Sinopec Internationals. Sinopec Group is established in 1950s. It has more than 70 years experience in the oil and gas industries. Sinopec Services, established in 2003, is more than almost 20 years the experience. So for Sinopec Services, it covers all the various definitions and the development phase of an industrial project, including the planning, that means the feasibility study, consulting services, and the conceptual design. We also do FEED and detailed design, engineering, procurement, construction, and construction management, even the financial assistance. And we also do the commissioning and planning, plant startup and training. Now this is the organization structures of the Sinopec. This, the red one is the Sinopec service we are here. So for Sinopec services, what we can do is the consulting, engineering, procurement, fabrication, construction, operation and maintenance, and then PMC. For Sinopec services, we have about 22,000 staffs and the equipment more than 11,000 pieces and sets. For Sinopec service, we have the certificate for ISO 9001, ISO 14001, and ISO 45001. Now this is the Sinopec services where we are commissioning the project. It's in Africa, in Asia, and in South America. It's about more than 12 countries. For this Tilenga project, we have opened the 2 offices in Kampala. The first one is in the Naguru office. The second, the blue one is the building Trust Tower. It's our office with our partners, the MDR together, the 7th floor. You're welcome to this office. Now please let me introduce the project background. That means Tilenga EPSCC project. The Tilenga upstream development project is a spread around the Lake Albert located on the border between Uganda and the DRC. The development is suited in environment-sensitive regions, that is Murchison Falls National Park. The purpose of the project is to provide various facilities, including onshore facilities for the production, storage, and export of crude oil through a CPF. Just now, our partners have explained the CPF. The multi-welled pad and associated pipeline systems include facilities for pre-injection of produced water, operational support base, and operators camp for field operations, lake water abstractions facilities, and Victoria Nilo River crossing facilities. Now this is a map of the project. We can see it's near the lake. Now this is the scope of the work overview. Just now, Engineer McGill has explained this includes 4 packages. Package 1 is belong to the academic, MDR. Package 2 is include pipeline and network and lake water abstraction. It includes 200 kilometers oil pipe and polymer pipeline, 100 kilometers FOC and electronic network. Package 3 and 4 is the wire pads. It includes 31 wire pads. 10 wire pads in north of Naro, 21 is in south of Naro. This is the picture of the location. Now let me explain the company's national content strategy and plan. Each partner is responsible of its own POs. In some cases, the scope is common and the procurement process is common until PO placement. There are already identified goods and services which will be provided for Uganda companies, ring-fenced. No ring-fenced might be provided by Uganda company, registered entity, in partnership, JV arrangement with international suppliers or contractors. International companies for materials or permanent works which are specialists and all priorities. There is a constructor list of subcontracts for services and equipment and materials. Each section is divided by categories and its base to bid list for each equipment or materials. There is a process established to add new subcontractors. That means who is not in the list. Any new subcontract has to be approved by the company and the contractor. For company approval, this process may take several months. Final contract awarded subject to the PAU approval. Now this is the practical examples for our logistic and freight forwarding services. Now, just now, Engineer McGill has explained. Now let me explain the opportunities for Sinopec and the local companies will work together, this opportunity. The direct use of Uganda local expertise goods and services. For subcontractor to local, the first one is Tangi Camp, a CHB EPC services. This project has been awarded to local companies. This office is for 40 people, individuals, containers for 10 people, including fuel tank of 30 cubic meters and other additional facilities. The next opportunity is the subcontract of the access route to access route constructions. This one will be tendered in the next 2 months. The length of the route is 19 kilometers. The width is 6 meters. This is not a marum route. It's not a AC route, it's a marum route. The next opportunity is wire pad constructions. This includes 31 wire pads. All the civil works will be subcontracted to Uganda companies. The next one is steel structures prefabrications. And the waste collection, transportation, and disposal. This will to be tendered. And leasing subcontracting construction parts for lake water abstractions, because there's about 2 kilometers the pipelines will construct it in a lake. So we need to these parts. And we also need the design services, including the construction, engineering, part of detailed design, geotechnical investigation, and site survey, and permit applications. We have given part of this job to new plan. Another to be subcontracted is the logistic services. For the international goods, we have to the shipment unloading in Mombasa, Kenya, and land transport transportation from Mombasa port to Tilenga oil block, and the customers' clearance, insurance related to the logistic services. The next one to be subcontracted is audit and test services. The below is the material and equipment we need to procure or rent from local. First is the commuter vehicles, the cranes, the cars on site or the cars in Kampala, especially the crane. We'll rent this in Kampala. The next is all the materials related to the oil civil constructions we'll buy from the local, include the sand, graveling, marram, cement, chippings for construction, and other materials or tools for construction, just like the rebars for construction, electric drills, cutting machines. The other facilities we need to buy from here is the office furniture and equipment. It includes the Sinopec MDR joint offices, the Trust Tower. The Sinopec's office in Kampala is in Nakuru. And the Sinopec CSB office is in site. Police are there. Another item is the PPE, personnel protective equipment. This contract will have been awarded to local. The services we need to proceed from here include several items. One is that human resources management. Next is the legal services. The legal services. And the financial services. Now this is the employee. More than 7% of the employee will be Uganda citizens. At the peak time of this construction, we'll employ more than 600 local people for this project. Now this is the training for the local employee we will provide or will commence in the next several years. The first training for Uganda citizens is the oil surfaces facilities, engineering, design, online training. It includes the basic knowledge of petroleum surfaces facility engineering, the history and experience of the development of Chinese petroleum industry, engineering and in-country support services, knowledge of oil and gas storage and transportation, introduction of horizontal directional drilling construction. The second training for the technical staff include welding, the scaffold level 1, 2, 3, and rigging level 3, mechanical fitting level 3, non-critical welders, E and I, welding work placement. Some of these trainers will get the ECITB certificate. For the technical staff training, we have selected 26 welders to undergo 6 weeks advanced welder training at Sunmaker Institute. This training has already ended. For these 26 students have been trained and certified in welding in accordance with an ISO 9606 international standard. After passing tests, the qualified welder will work in pipeline and well pipe construction. Okay. This is the opening ceremony. This is the opening ceremony of the welding training. This is also the picture. Now the third training is for the HSE. HSE includes the certificate schemes, foundational level, construction green card, working at height, confined spaces, and other HSE training. these the pictures for the HSE training. This is HSE training. Now the fourth training is internship. Include undergraduate students, graduate students, and other students. The students shall participate in an internship of not less than 3 months on a site or on a workshop. The number 5 training is the management staff training. It includes construction development program and office work. The last training is provided by all manufacturers. Suppliers and manufacturers in consultation with the company and the contractor shall be responsible for identifying and training the competent Uganda technical resource on the usage and operation of equipment, including all associated costs involved for the purpose of the successful implement of the project. We will have a workshop in Katunga House upstairs from 12 to 2 o'clock. We hope that we can explore more opportunities there, and we get more detailed information there we'll provide. You are welcome, warmly welcomed to the workshop. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chi, and a round of applause for all our panelists. Excellent presentation. I apologize that I have really rushed you, and I feel the audience feels the same. I apologize on behalf of myself and the organizers. We have so much information to be shared today. Probably because we have a session in Katonga Hall just after here, where we'll have all the subcontractors of McDermott Sinopec presenting. We have the presenters here with us through the day. We have a networking dinner that starts at 6. And so there are opportunities to interact and pick information, pick guidance and ask questions. But maybe since Mr. Shi has saved me 2 minutes, I could pick just 2 questions. And as those questions are answered, I would want McDermott to indicate where their offices are at and how Ugandan companies or other interested companies can approach them. So just 2 questions, 2 minutes, we're out of here. Okay, if I don't see a hand up in the next few seconds, I would assume we've understood everything. Jimmy, you are up. One from Jimmy, and we think close this. Everybody else seems happy. These presentations will be shared to everybody registered and in attendance on your registered email, so you'll be able to go through them in your free time. Jimmy, I think you're loud enough. If you could just shoot.
Thank you, Jimmy Mgerazaram Consulting Group. Thanks for the presentation. I think they're pretty transparent. So I think you deserve a round of applause for that. However, we see that a number of people have been awarded contracts, which means they've done some prep, earlier prep, or they had prior information for them to be able to compete. Could you maybe now or in the future share with us, the whole plan, say for the whole of 2022? When are the CFTs? When are the expressions of interest going to come out? So that people can prepare, whether it means preparing for the joint ventures or it means preparing for the subcontractors who may be coming in. Otherwise, I don't know about other people, but I seem like I get surprised every time some names are mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy. One more from Dr. Eli, and apologies to everybody else who will have a chance to ask in the Katonga room. Just one from Eli. I think Jimmy Total McDermott picked that question.
I think since this morning, I think all these presenters, they really deserved our standing ovation, and we clap for them. But I'd like to ask my question to the gentleman sitting next to me here, our first keynote speaker. With all these opportunities that the panel has presented, and with us in the audience, how are we going to get money to fulfill these contracts? And how are you going to stop us being tortured by the banks when we go there to look for money to be assisted to fulfill these contracts? Because so far, the stories we are hearing from Ugandans who are new to oil, when they get these contracts, to get any money from any bank is a nightmare. And all the banks are saying they have money to give us, but when people go there, they just don't know what to do except feeling so stressed, coming, shaking their heads, and now going to money lenders. Now you can imagine how risky that is going to be. Now that we have the man we have been waiting for, in the names of James Mwangi, who gave us a horizon and a fantastic presentation about Atlantic to Indian Ocean. Can you tell the banks to go easy and deal with us in a normal way? Because right now, we are frustrated.
Thank you, Doctor. As we wait for the big announcement from the banks here, instigated by Dr. Mwangi, let me ask Mr. Kwizera to deal with Mr. Mugera's question.
Thank you, Peter. I think Mr. Mugera's challenge was, he seems to be caught by surprise by some of these awards. Can we have a longer outlook on our procurements and opportunities? We agree. In fact, as an operator, we do have annual procurement plans submitted to the authority as standard practice. However, we also do have quarterly supplier engagements. So we actually thought if we package the opportunities in quarters or 6 months, it might be easier for the suppliers to zoom in on the things that are imminent so that they can put their finite resources on those that are imminent. Then every quarter we remind them. But we take the challenge, and I don't want to put my colleague on the spot, but I know our corporate affairs team is working on updating our website where we shall have longer term outlooks for our procurement. So this will be handled, but we strongly encourage all prospective suppliers to take in interest during our supplier dialogues, because there we will provide, like you saw from McDermott, they have a 6-month outlook so that you can put your resources on that is imminent. But I hear your challenge. Even for the annual procurement plans, we'll make them available through our different platforms. I hope that is sufficient, Peter.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Maybe to just supplement, is it possible to supply these annual procurement plans to, say, UCMP for distribution, provide them on your websites?
We will take this away because it's a regulatory submission to government. We will need to consult the regulator. As you can imagine, some of the information is commercially sensitive, but we'll see what can be put in the public domain. As Jimmy has noted, we are very transparent. Our intention is to make sure we maximize participation. So we will do whatever we can to make the information available. But on the issue of publishing in UCMP, I'll have to take it away, Peter, and consult, as it is a regulatory requirement. So we'll need to consult with the authority on how much can be put in the public domain ahead of submission to the authority. So I'll take it away.
I think that's a fair answer. In any case, they are advertised in the press. Jimmy, I'm going to request that we take this away and I will facilitate the conversation. Thank you so much. Dr. Mwangi, we are waiting for a proclamation from you and all the banks here that our lives are going to be made easy. Please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. As usual, challenging question. But broadly, as I said, we have set aside $6 billion to support transformation within the region, including the transformation that will come with Ugandan oil. Our single lending obliga is $450 million. So we can accommodate Tier 1 and all the others to their full requirement. We said 6 billion will not be sufficient, so we are backed by development banks, 16 of them, to ensure we have adequate funding flowing into the region. And lastly, the biggest challenge has been to understand this sector. And that is why we said we have hired the people from Saudi Arabia, from Middle East, who have the experience to be able to help us finance, because financing has happened elsewhere. And lastly, this afternoon, we'll be signing with UNOC an agreement to enable us fund local content so that all micro, small enterprises, we have an agreement and we are using guarantee structures to ensure that anybody who gets a contract can be funded. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mwangi, and thank you for being an excellent audience. Dr. Mwangi says equity has money, and I want to put on the spot Anthony here, who sits in Kampala. It's sometimes difficult to get Dr. Mwangi. So Anthony, please stand up so that our people can see who they will disturb. Sam. Apologies. That's the man to disturb. He sits in Kampala. So thank you so much. I think what we learn from this conversation is that the opportunities are many. And some have gone, but many are available. The teams are available. The adverts will be in the newspapers. Let's prepare, let's plan, let's be meticulous, and we shall get to provide the services and the goods in the oil and gas sector. Thank you, and I wish you a wonderful afternoon.
That was a small round of applause. Can we give a big hand clap to the team for the wonderful presentation? You'll agree with me, it's been a very fruitful morning. Lots of information, lots of takeaways, things to think about as we reflect on how best we want to develop the sector and make our own individual contributions. So we are heading into the breakout sessions. So in your programs, you'll see we're supposed to be having some tea as well. It's going to be a working break. So you'll have the tea while you are engaging with both Sinopec and McDermott. So just to be clear, the McDermott session is staying here in the Victoria Hall, and then Sinopec will go to Katonga Hall. So you're free to go to both sessions, once your questions are addressed in one of the sessions, you can cross over to the other hall and be able to engage both parties. And the session is going to have not just those two, but their contractors as well, who will be able to then break down their own scope of work and how you can tap into the opportunities that are available. But before you head out, I would just like to bring to your attention a few things. At the entrance, there's a table where we request that you leave your business cards. I hope you came with your business cards. We have an offer from Bar Aviation of 2 tickets to Kihihi. For those of us that don't know where Kihihi is, it is in the southwest of Uganda, and it is famous for gorilla trekking, So if you're keen on gorilla trekking, doing some tourism in Uganda, if you're Ugandan, going to parts of Uganda that you've not been to, make sure that your business card is right there so that you can possibly be one of the lucky winners. The other announcement I would like to make is that lunch will be in the same area, so we will not come back here. We will have the next session until 1:30. From there, you will go straight to the tent where we had our lunch yesterday. The coupons will be there. And then after lunch at 2:30, let's converge here. Now, you don't want to miss the afternoon session. We equally have important information, this time from the team that is running the ECOP project. So we're going to have the contractors on the ECOP project as well speak to us. And we're going to have a panel just like we have had, exposing the different opportunities available to us. So please make sure you do not run away. And even more importantly, in the evening networking event, there's a lot for us to benefit from this event today. So let's make sure we are back at 2:30 and take advantage of what the Uganda Chamber of Mines and Petroleum has prepared for us. And lastly, for those that may, for whatever reason, want to step away, we are live streaming on YouTube through the Smart 24 TV, so you can still follow the events, but please, as much as possible, try and stay with us. I hope that is clear, and thank you once again for paying attention this morning. Enjoy the next session, Victoria Hall with McDermott, Katonga Hall with Sinopec. Enjoy the sessions.